Okay, so I suppose I can start, even though the time is not yet. Well, I can start talking about me. I think that shouldn't be part of of the talk. So the title of the talk is going to be Developer Experience and Flow State. Stop thinking about productivity and start thinking about flow state. And I am Fernando Villalba. I work as a principal engineer here at Civo. And my background is on infrastructure engineering, DevOps roles, and that sort of thing. Cool. So I'll start right now. Right. So yeah, that was the slide about me. I think I got ahead of myself. That's that QR code you take to my LinkedIn, so in case anyone wants to say hi. Okay, so this is the agenda for today. And I want to start to talk about the many definitions of developer experience, because one of the things that it is confusing about developer experience is that there are quite a few different definitions when you go and search for it on Google, and not many people seem to agree. Hello? Yeah. Not many people seem to agree with not two people seem to agree with what developer experience means. So here I'm going to go over the three most popular definitions, and then I'm going to suggest an alternative that perhaps is better or not, or then I'll just create more confusion myself. So the first one is this. It comes from the DevX paper, and it says, developer experience encompasses how developers feel about, think about, and value their work. I think this definition is correct, but my problem with it is that perhaps it is too broad, because if you are a company and you look at this and you want to improve the developer experience in your company, what do you think about? Okay, you think about the feelings of the developers, you feel about what they think. What exactly do you target exactly to improve the developer experience? And this definition could pretty much apply to pretty much every employee in your company, right? I mean, you do have to care about what your employees feel about and care, when they're working for you. So this is good, it's correct, but I think we can do better. This is another popular developer experience definition, and this is the UX for devs definition. Is developer experience is the equivalent of user experience when the primary user of the product is a developer. I think that this definition has the opposite problem in the sense that it's too compartmentalized. I do believe that tools are extremely important for the developer experience, but they're not the only thing. And finally, this is the Microsoft definition, the one in their website, and it may be my favorite definition out of these three. And its developer experience refers to how easy or difficult it is for a developer to perform essential tasks needed to implement a change. And I think we're getting closer here to what I mean here, because when you're working in a company, it is very frustrating to actually get into the flow of things, then this definition quite applies reasonably well to where we get there. Now, one more definition. This one may be mine. And this is great developer experience is what you get when developers can easily get in and maintain flow state at work. And this talk, more than developer experience, is going to be about flow state and why flow state is so important to improve the developer experience in your company. So let's start with what is flow state. Flow state is also known as in the zone or deep work, and is a mental state in which a person is fully immersed in an activity and experiences a feeling of energized focus, enjoyment, and timelessness. This would be the flow Goldilocks zone of flow. So it's somewhere between arousal and control. Like if you're too much in control of a task, where to the point that it becomes drudgery, then it becomes too boring and you're not so much in the flow. But if it gives you some challenge and it's something that you enjoy doing, then you're getting into the flow of things. So now let me talk about why I feel flow state is such an important thing that you should focus on as a company. This is a popular cartoon that I found online, and it's like why you shouldn't interrupt a programmer. And yeah, you're very, very concentrated on the task. Then someone comes to you and they ask you, hey, I just sent you an email about that thing. And then you just get frustrated because you just got interrupted and you're like lost the flow of whatever you were doing. And I feel like at many companies, especially companies that are not tech-focused, tech-centered, management sometimes does not understand the way developers work and the way engineers work in general. So they will pepper your day with meetings, they will come up with a lot of interruptions, they will do things that effectively go against you getting into the flow of things and getting concentrated and actually do your work. So this is why, one of the reasons that I feel like should be a focus of the developer experience. And it is quite common in top performers. By top performance here, I mean, this is Michelangelo, and I mean top performers of creative work, right? This is Michelangelo, and this is Isaac Newton's as well. And I put these two examples because when I was reading about their life in the past, they always talk about how they would forget to eat. They just wouldn't sleep. They would just sleep on their clothes. They were just so into the task that they would just lose a sense of time, and they were just so absorbed into the task, actually really enjoying it because it's a very creative sort of endeavor. And it's very common in video games. I put this game as an example because it's one of the last games that I played where I felt like I just completely lost a sense of time there, you know, like being a warmonger and attacking everyone and going on a campaign. I don't know why. It's just so much more fun to be a warmonger than doing diplomacy in this game. But yeah, I mean, and the reason why I put this as an example as well, because there are a lot of examples of people who are gamers and then they transition into a development role. And what I saw in some of the videos when they talk about it is that they had this this passion that was gaming, and then they were able to transition it to programming because they felt like a sense of flow in this activity as well. And yeah, when you look at positive psychology, they said that flow state, I mean, you have flow experiences there on the side, is part of a meaningful life. If you have a life where a part of your life is dedicated to these flow experiences, where you're actually like very devoted to your work, a hobby or whatever, it will actually make you happier. And I mean, there are a lot of things there that a company cannot fix for you. A company, you know, cannot give you a family, maybe cannot give you supportive relationships in terms of like, it can, but not, I mean, not to like the same extent that it could support like maybe flow state or stuff. So let's just talk very briefly about optimizing a company for flow. I believe that flow is a shared responsibility. I mean, it starts with leadership. Leadership has to encourage it. So leadership must encourage and push culture that enables flow for engineers, but it's everyone's responsibility to make sure it happens. And these are 7 conditions for flow. I mean, the actual 7 conditions are by that guy, Owen Schaffer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Schaffer or whatever. And he's a psychologist, positive psychologist. He wrote this paper and he came up with the 7 conditions. And the stuff, the anti-pattern is something that I associated with it. So knowing what to do is like having that lack of vision, lack of context and planning. Knowing how to do it is having the lack of resources, training, documentation, hard to find what's needed. Knowing how well one is doing is lack of feedback loops, testing and observability. Knowing where to go, lack of internal compass, processes, knowing who to talk to. And then high perceived challenges, not project work, too much firefighting and drudgery. High perceived skills, lack of challenging work, and then freedom from distractions, which is one that comes quite often, like too many meetings, lack of async communication, etc. Now, I feel like you could probably have a talk about each one of these, and I don't particularly want to do a talk like that is too long. So I want to, well, this is a cognitive load distribution, which is how you want to divide your task. I mean, there is intrinsic load, which is difficulty and details of concept, strenuous load, and your main load as well. And if you have a good cognitive load distribution, most of your cognitive load would be your main, which is what pertains to the actual task. Whereas intrinsic is like how difficult the task is. And you want to reduce the strenuous cognitive load as much as possible, which is the stuff that we're trying to aim here with this talk. And the two things that I wanted to focus on here, because yeah, as I said, I don't want this talk to be too long, is knowing what to do and freedom from distractions. Not because these are particularly, the most important here, is just simply something that I've been looking at recently, and I just wanted to give like a couple of more specific examples here. So, knowing what to do. So vision and values, I think many companies don't have these very well defined. And I think vision is very important to know where you're going as a company, and your values is how should you get there. And vision and values help to answer these questions. What is important whenever you have to do something? What is the ultimate goal? And how should we make the things that we do? And I wanted to offer an example here. And maybe you can guess the company based on this vision statement. Let's start with the second one I highlighted here. We believe in the simple, not the complex. We believe that we need to own and control the primary technologies behind the products that we make, and participate only in markets where we can make a significant contribution. Does anyone want to guess which company is this, the second one? No, it's not Civo. It's not Civo, but we need to own and control the primary technologies behind the products that we make. That should kind of give it away. Apple. Yes, someone said Apple. That's correct. And the first one, help people and businesses throughout the world realize their full potential. Yes, that's right, Microsoft. You must have known by association, or maybe you read it before, because I think that the second one, it is quite specific about the way that Apple does things. But the first one, it feels very generic. And I'm going to make here a controversial statement, and some of you may disagree with me, but I do believe that over time, Apple has released more creative and more revolutionary products than Microsoft has. And one of the reasons why is that their vision is very clearly defined. Many people don't like the way that Apple does things, and that's fine. If you don't like the way that Apple does things, and I can totally understand why, and I can agree with it. I'm not here to defend Apple or be an Apple fanboy. But what I like about them is that they're very, very specific about how they do things, and that sort of drives the way that they do things. Whereas Microsoft, well, not so much. I mean, help people in business throughout the world to realize their full potential. I mean, could be the tagline for a supermarket or a train or a gym or whatever. So, yeah, it's not as specific. And I feel like a well-defined why makes writing OKRs easier. So if you have like a good vision and a good set of values, you can sort of focus on what OKRs are better for your company and what should you focus on. Yeah, and this is based on a Nietzsche phrase, which is about life actually. It's he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. And in this case, it could be to work, right? If you work at a company where you really believe and you're really on board with the mission and the values of that company, it's much easier for you to get into the flow of things. To go back to my example of video games, I really like it when I play games that have like good plots and good storylines, because it kind of like makes you more pumped to follow along with the game. Like if you're saving the world, it's much better than if you just go to the supermarket to buy milk, right? It's a completely different set of, of mission right there. Right, and this is the freedom from distractions. And I'm gonna make another controversial statement here. I would say ditch status meetings. I mean, I particularly don't like or have never been on daily stand-ups where I felt like it was over time, like very useful for most developers in that stand-up. And I feel like instead of daily stand-ups and instead of having status meetings where everyone just stands around and saying, oh, I did this, I'm gonna do that and this and that, you can focus on your board instead. If you have a good board that defines exactly what you're doing with good tickets, with good titles of the tickets, and someone can come in and look at that board and get an idea of what needs to be worked on and what the progress are, I think that's a much better alternative to just standing up and talking about what you're doing. And I'm not saying that this is the only way, but this is one way of one alternative to do this. So, and I think that especially with remote companies and with well, overall in general with developers to protect that flow, I think it's good to focus on asynchronous communication, have better tools for asynchronous communication. So have the right tools for writing things down. I think Slack is a good tool, but sometimes I also feel like Slack can get really messy. So sometimes it's good if you have better structured communication, or if you're able to translate that Slack, stream of messages into a way that is more structured for people to follow. And great user experience of internal tooling is very important, especially if you're a team that is developing a tool that other internal teams are going to use. You want to create it in a way that is intuitive, the same way that you would create it for your external users, or just as good or better. In fact, one of the reasons why some developers like miss working at Google when they leave is that they miss the internal toolings that they have there, because apparently Google has very good internal toolings for developers there. I think internal tooling and design is a way to communicate with your users without having to talk or write. So, and then yes, make context abundantly visible. I think I lead a team now, and one of the things that I always strive to do is that whenever I get context from leadership, or whenever there's new OKRs or new priorities, I try to let the team know as soon as possible all that context up front, so they're not lost, or it's not like, come in like 1 hour before and tell them, okay, you have to do this or whatever. And that's a problem that I've been at many companies where the context is not very clear. I think that you should always lead with context. So you tell your team, hey, here's the context, this is what we need to do, and then your team can actually organize around that without having to say, oh, do this because I say so. And this is, I said before we shouldn't have status meetings, but that I did not, like sometimes when I say stuff like this, people get really defensive and they say, oh, we need to have meetings to talk to people, you need to build relationships. I'm not saying don't have meetings, I'm simply saying have meetings that look more like this. So don't invite passive observers, don't have like a meeting with like 12 people and then 2 people are talking and 10 people are just like sitting there, just like saying nothing or just being passive. Keep the number of participants small. I think the Pareto principle kind of applies. The more people you add to meetings, I think if the more people are there, the more likely it is that only 1 or 2 people do all the talking. If you keep the number of participants small, it's much more likely that everyone is going to be involved. Provide the abundant context before the meetings. So this is especially true if you're discussing something that is very complex and that requires a lot of thinking. Don't invite people without having the context or without knowing what they're talking about, because then they're just going to come to the meeting and they may have like an opinion or a knee-jerk judgment about something that they are not really that familiar with. And then lastly, encourage shy speakers to share their opinion. I think, yeah, we work in tech, we're all shy. I'm shy, you're shy. So yeah. Right, so finally, yeah, the title of the talk, yeah, let's not talk about developer productivity. This went viral like a few months ago, and because there was a paper that said, yes, you can measure developer productivity, and it became like very controversial. And I do feel like a lot of the developer experience articles and talks that you see online, they're all around productivity. And I do feel that trying to focus on flow state or removing the things that don't make people productive is much more conducive to actually being productive indirectly than just trying to measure what people do. And yeah, if you search for developer experience and productivity, you have a lot more results than if you associate it with flow state. And yeah, this is also I'm sure many of you have seen this already, like when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So I'd say that based on everything that I said here, trying to create the conditions for flow state to happen when it needs to happen, it doesn't mean that everyone needs to be in flow state all the time, but whenever they have to actually do something, they can reach the flow state easier, is much better than actually like striving for just productivity. Yeah, and finally, yeah, none of that matters if you don't hire great people, because I think it would be disingenuous for me to say that, yeah, like everything can happen. You know, like sometimes you cannot do magic if you don't hire right, if you don't hire people that are like, that can work independently, that have like sense of autonomy, that have agency. I think that's a very important key ingredient of your hiring process, or at least most of the people should have that agency to actually go and trying to improve things on a daily basis. And that was it. That's all I have to say. Sorry if I don't know if it was a little rush or whatever, but yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. Okay, sounds good.
So I found it interesting that the last part was about hiring. How do you teach people to reach flow state?
Huh?
How do you teach people to achieve flow state?
Well, you don't.
I mean, you don't have. I think hiring is also about educating them, right? And you don't have like magic people flying around everywhere.
Well, okay, so the question is like, how do you teach people to reach flow state? Yeah, I don't feel that you do teach people to reach flow state the same way that you don't teach people how to sleep. I mean, if you want to make sleep better for someone, you make a room that is less noisy, you have a more comfortable mattress, you create the conditions where sleep becomes easier. So, you know, you can teach people to make a room that is quieter and how to make things better for reaching sleep. So in that sense, yes, you can actually like maybe approach it scientifically, like what things can you do in order to make flow state easier. And that may work differently for different companies, but I think there are quite a few common things that you can do, such as the thing that I strongly feel that if you lead with context and you favor async communication rather than just like hammering people with meetings or interruptions, I think that eventually leads to more flow state. But it's not the only thing. There's so many other things, such as the way that your organizations, your processes are organized and your engineering practices, etc.
Just thinking that maybe we're in a state of society where reaching that state is very difficult because we're always bombarded by notifications from all services that we use, you know? And I just think that assuming that someone you hire knows how to get to flow state
Yeah.
might be a false assumption. So I think it would be good to tell them, like, turn off your notifications for an hour, you know? I won't fire you because you're not available for 2 hours, you know? I know that you're working.
Exactly.
Like that, right?
So this is exactly what this talk has been about. Yes, do that. That's all I can say about that. I mean, and approach it systematically as well. See what works, see what doesn't. I think just you don't have to know. You don't have to have like an entire recipe for it. But the moment you start thinking about this, I think that's already a massive improvement. That's a huge improvement right there. That's all? No more questions?
Can I ask a tiny question?
Sure.
You picked Civilization because of Elon Musk?
Did I pick what, sorry?
Civilization, the game, because of the Elon Musk?
No. Why? Why? Is he associated with Civilization somehow?
I just recently read about him, and in his times before, he was very good at the flow. He wake up in the morning, he could code and just slow down and sleep. And he had a very one big problem because if he start play Civilization, he do the same. He just wake up, play Civilization, forget to eat, forget to this one, and go sleep.
That is exactly my experience when I play Civilization. That's why I don't play Civilization anymore. Because when I play, I do remember for an entire day that's all I did. People my girlfriend at the time was texting me. I didn't eat, so all I did was play Civilization. So, yes, I mean I didn't know that there was something to do with Elon Musk there, but yeah, Go ahead.
With this graph that you had where flow state was in the top right, I often imagine this sort of thing where I'm engaged and everything, which is more like a coding task or something like this, but the way you're talking about the rest of it's more about processes and like how we navigate through the enterprise or your commuting stuff. So what other stuff are you thinking about that also gives you this entertainment or whatever the two axes were at the time? So I'm just trying to imagine, I'm in GitHub and I'm getting some sort of great flow of moving around. Is that what you're sort of thinking about? Like, or how do we break down barriers there?
Yeah, so if you're a developer in a team or an engineer of any kind, if you feel like what you're doing is important, especially if your values sort of align with the company and you really align with the mission of the company, which it may not be. It may just be that you're aligned with the engineering objectives of that company. And if you're in a team where you actually enjoy what you're doing and it's easy for you to actually do what you need to do, that makes it, I mean, I consulted for organizations in the past where it was pretty crazy to do anything. Like you didn't even know who you could speak to in order to do something. And there was like a directory of people and you speak to one person, sends you to another person and then to another person and to another person. And you never actually had a chance to do anything. That's, for me, that's a flow killer. So, yeah. Okay, I don't know if, yeah.
There's a break now, so I'm sure you can all get a coffee, tea, whatever, and Fernando will have a conversation with you now.
Yeah, you can interrupt my flow and talk about flow. Why not?